Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to 2CTV, your global news channel. I'm Maya 2C, and this is your latest news update, this time coming from Westminster and also technically the White House. Although, to be more accurate, actually Florida, because President Trump is going to be taking the BBC to court and to bankrupt them. And the BBC are doubling down on their idiocy. There is currently an emergency meeting in Westminster, the heart of the capital in the UK, over the scandal of BBC bias that has now been exposed against President Trump. Over the last couple of days, we've had a lot of ups and downs. Of course, we had a couple of senior resignations, including the Director General and the CEO of BBC News. But in this live stream, we're going to give you guys the latest update on what's happening between the White House and the British state, essentially. The war has now started. We're going to get your reaction as well. First things first, what is going on here? All right, so President Trump is now going to be taking the BBC to court. The deadline is now Friday, the 14th of November now, for $1 billion. $1 billion. Accusing the BBC of manipulating his speech, which is obviously correct. And the BBC confirmed that they have received the letter from President Trump's lawyer, Brito. The emergency meeting is now happening now. In case you might have missed it, just as a reminder, this was what they did. BBC One Panorama edited the speech on the January 6th, 2021. This is what they showed, and this was the real clip.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
And then, 50 minutes later,
we fight. We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. Anyway,
so that was the edited video some of you might have already seen. But President Trump released a new statement since yesterday after the resignation of Tim Davey, the Director General of the BBC, saying the top people in the BBC, including Tim Davey, the boss, are all quitting or getting fired because they were caught doctoring my very good, perfect speech of January 6th. Thank you to the Telegraph for exposing these corrupt journalists. These are very dishonest people who try to step on the scales of a presidential election, obviously. On top of everything else, they are from a foreign country, one that many consider our number one ally. What a terrible thing for democracy. Absolutely spot on. Now, you might wonder why this is happening. Well, let me tell you. This is Samir Shah. Samir Shah is the chair of the BBC, born in India, now at the top of power in the British state. In 2021, Samir Shah co-authored the UK government's Commission on Race and Ethnic Disparities report. Basically, white people are bad, non-white people are good, and we need more non-white people, and basically using the British tax money to write a report confirming their own biases. Now, the surrogates of the BBC, from their legacy media figures, including as well as the mainstream parties and the political establishment, they're all coming out to defend the BBC. They're all coming out to attack President Trump. And it's not going too well so far because the chief cheerleader of the British state and the BBC happens to be the clown Ed Davey, the leader of the Liberal Democrats. Yes, Ed Davey has written a letter. I'm going to read the letter quickly, but before we do that, he was being interviewed because They've been very busy. They've been sending out their surrogates to go out, attack President Trump, attack the conservative-minded people, defend establishments, because they know that the BBC is finally going down. This is the beginning of the downfall. The US government is now coming for them. Ordinary people in Britain have been cancelling their TV license anyway. They are running out of money and they are running out of friends. So the political establishment are coming for, to support them. Let me give you this example. Ed Davey said the BBC isn't perfect, but it belongs to Britain, not President Trump.
Nigel Farage, in a press conference today, directly accused the BBC of election interference. Those are the words that he used. He says that the BBC committed election interference. Do you understand why he's saying that, or do you think that is far too extreme?
I think it's far too extreme. The interference we've seen in elections has come from Nigel Farage's friend, Vladimir Putin. We've seen Russian interference in the most profound, appalling ways, and yet Nigel Farage calls Vladimir Putin the world leader he most admires. I think people need to see through Nigel Farage, see through Donald Trump, and realise what they're trying to do to our great country and our British values. Liberal Democrats won't accept it. I don't think the vast majority of British people will either.
Okay.
Are you surprised that you're the only party that's really been backing to the hilt the BBC, being positive about the BBC this morning?
I'm slightly worried, to be honest. That's why I've written to Keir Starmer and Kenny Badenoch and Nigel Farage in the hope that they will back me to criticise Donald Trump for his attack on our BBC. I don't want to be the only party leader defending the BBC. I hope others come and join me.
But you are right now, because you might get sued, Ed. You need to be very careful about what you say, especially when it comes to accusing any sort of collusion with Russia or Vladimir Putin. Do you want to get sued? If you want to, President Trump has enough money to do that as well. And it's getting embarrassing now, but it's not just the BBC. I'm going to read the letter from President Trump's lawyer. Then I'm going to read the letter from Ed Davey, because, let's just have some fun. We have a reaction from the former CEO of BBC News. But it's not just the BBC. I discovered something earlier today. We at 2CTV, we watch the mainstream media so you don't have to suffer, and we give you guys the summary of what they rant about. Sky News earlier today implied that Christians who happen to be conservative-minded and patriots are far right. This is a cancer in the media culture that we have. Let me just quickly show you this. This is so embarrassing, but I'm going to point out the biggest problem with this Sky News segment.
What can you just clarify some terms? So maybe I should have known this. What is Christian nationalism?
Yeah, it's a term that more applies to the US, where we've seen it, where they have a tradition of really public political Christianity, but basically
far-right Christianity.
Nationalist plus Christian. The idea being that people use a Christian identity to exclude others. We do have some sort of history of that in the UK, especially in Northern Ireland, as Christianity is a means of identity. But it feels like it's something new. We've been going to Tommy Robinson rallies, the anti-Islam activist, for a while now, and really struck by the one here in Westminster in September, how many crosses we saw. The Lord's...
Well, they saw crosses, but no, wait for it. What else, apart from crosses? Lord's Prayer.
Prayer being said, it was really front and centre, and that felt like a new...
That is very scary, guys. Lord's Prayer and the crosses, this is the end of the world as we know it. And he literally said, based on their research, Sky News have discovered that this nationalists and Christianity, it's to exclude people. Christianity and the message of Jesus was literally to be the real definition of the word inclusive. It was universal. It was about the fact that everybody should be welcome. And that is the whole point of why Christianity has been a massive success in terms of the rise of it. The guy doesn't know what he's talking about, obviously, but they're using it. And also saying that these people who are just patriots, if you fly the flag of your country and also say, I'm Team Jesus, then that means you are a far-right Christian. You cannot be a far-right Christian. It's an oxymoron. It makes no sense. Anyway, Ed Davey wrote a letter. Let's go back to Ed Davey, the clown Ed Davey, saying, I've written a letter to Keir Starmer, Kenny Badenoch and Nigel Farage, urging them to condemn Donald Trump's attack on the BBC. I'm just going to read a bit of it. It's so embarrassing. Dear Prime Minister. Oh, hello. President Trump's assault on the BBC is a serious threat to our national interests. And I urge you to join me in standing up against it. The BBC belongs to everyone here in the United Kingdom. We should be incredibly proud that the UK is home to the world's #1 source of trusted news. I mean, it is technically the UK is home to the world's #1 source of trusted news, 2CTV. But yeah, something that strengthens our democracy while also enhancing our power to uphold our values around the globe. What are our values there, Davey? I really want to ask him if he knows what values he's talking about. As a public service broadcaster, the BBC has an important, distinctive and vibrant role to play in the UK's cultural and media landscape. Translation, the BBC is there to be the propaganda machine and manipulate you. Helping to boost growth and create jobs, on taxpayers' money? That is not creating jobs, you absolute bozo. We cannot afford to let it be destroyed by Donald Trump and his allies. It should be extremely concerning to us all to see the President of the United States pressuring the BBC over its leadership and attacking its journalists as corrupt. It's because they lied, you nutter. They literally doctored the video. And his press secretary telling everyone to watch GB News. Well, that was just funny because she was speaking to GB. They make it sound like the White House released a statement saying, don't watch the BBC, watch GB News. But that would be weird. It was actually because Levitt was actually talking to GB News. Obviously, GB News are friendlier towards the White House. So she was being nice. She said, actually, yeah, watch your channel. They should watch GB News because it's not really anti-White House. Anyway, he says it should not be up to foreign powers to dictate where the British people get their news from. You guys spent years attacking Fox News in the US, especially back when Fox News used to be more robust and sound. We must stand united to defend our democracy from foreign interference like this. For the record, the political left in Britain sent their activists to help Kamala Harris during the 2024 presidential election. The left in Britain need to shut up for a little bit, even when it comes to, from our crucial ally. The BBC's strength lies in its independence and impartiality. Didn't know he was going to make a joke in the letter. That has been eroded, and it is essential that together we urgently work to ensure that it is properly independent and strong enough to stand up to political pressure, whether foreign or domestic. The BBC must stay true to its original mission. I agree with that. To inform, educate and entertain. And not be bullied into giving undue prominence to the loudest, most divisive voice. I promise you, if the BBC happened to be right-wing propaganda, Ed Davey would be attacking it. But just because it's left-wing, they don't really care. They're like, this is good. We need to protect the BBC. Anyway, ranting about the rest of the letter nonsense. The rest of the mainstream media are also coming out to defend the BBC. They are panicking. I can assure you they are panicking because they know the BBC is going down. About time. We have, for example, this weirdo. Kirsty Allslab says, without the BBC, today's ceremony from the cenotaph would not have been televised. For the record, this is yesterday, Sunday, Remembrance Sunday, every year, right? Kirsty, you are an idiot. No, that's not how it works. She says without the BBC, nobody would be able to see Remembrance Sunday service in Westminster from the cenotaph. No. We had chief sources, including Reuters and Associated Press, right there with their cameras to provide the live feed to all channels, including, of course, we work with Reuters in terms of the live feeds, not in terms of journalists, we have our own. They also provided to GB News, Associated Press, of course, work with GB News, and all the other broadcasters around the world. Sky News also have their own cameras. Sky News was there. Reuters was there. Associated Press was there. We don't need you, you weirdos. And that is a lie. Anyway, the BBC is not focusing on actual threats. They made that fake film about President Trump, right? The issue with that is that they said there is a threat from Trumpianism, so we have to expose it. Why is it that today and this week, BBC is not really focusing on a real threat that was literally mentioned? I'm not even joking. This is a serious issue. Iqbal Mohammed MP, you know, the MP who made a move against the Jews in Birmingham to ban the Israelis. He made a speech. He declared, and I quote, I'm going to show you the video, the evidence. We must, this is the Islamist MP, we must take over the whole of Birmingham, the whole of the West Midlands, and the whole of the United Kingdom. We will not be taken for granted, and we will win. Now, if President Trump, or I don't know, let's just say Tommy Robinson, Nick Tenconi, someone else would say the exact same words, we will take over, well, this will be a threat from the far right, and the BBC will focus on it, right? That's what they would do. Let's go to the speech.
These events, these activities, this unity must grow and continue and take over not just parts of Birmingham, but the whole of Birmingham, the whole of the West Midlands, the whole of the UK.
Well, that's concerning. Look at the crowd. Where are the women? Oh, I forget. Women have to be on the other side. Segregation. Lovely, lovely Britain in 2025, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, should we read the letter? This is actually quite entertaining. I'm going to read the letter, then I'm going to show you a video statement we've just received from the leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage. And also, we're going to go to the former CEO of BBC News to get her reaction as well. She's the one who got fired, Deborah. It was absolutely delicious. But first things first, let me read out the summary of the letter that has now been sent out to the BBC from President Trump's lawyer. Dear all, this law firm serves as a litigation counsel for President Donald J. Trump. Please direct all future correspondence relating to this matter to my attention, and this correspondence serves as a demand under Florida statute. That you immediately retract the false and defamatory and inflammatory statements made about President Trump, which were published in a Panorama documentary that was fabricated and aired by the BBC. Failure to comply will leave President Trump with no choice but to pursue any and all legal rights and remedies available to recover damages for the overwhelming financial and reputational harm that the BBC has caused him to suffer, with all rights and remedies being expressly reserved by President Trump. And then they continued, because this letter keeps going for a while in terms of the details of what they're talking about. But what I want to read out is a section which is the actual demand. The above referenced false, malicious and inflammatory statements were published to deliberately attack President Trump. The timing of the fabricated documentary is evident. The BBC's reckless disregard for the truth underscores the actual malice behind the decision to publish the wrongful content, given the plain falsity of their statements. According to President Trump, hereby demands that you immediately issue a full and fair retraction of the documentary and any and all other false, defamatory, misleading and inflammatory statements about President Trump in as conspicuous a manner that they were originally published. 2, immediately issue an apology for the false and defamatory, misleading statements about President Trump. And 3, compensate President Trump for the harm caused. So they don't just want an apology. A lot of people thought that, well, the White House are simply asking for an apology. No, because the apology already came anyway. This goes beyond that. Anyway, it says, if the BBC does not comply with the above by November the 14th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, President Trump will be left with no alternative but to enforce his legal and equitable rights, all of which are expressly reserved and are not waived, including by filing legal action for no less than $1 billion in damages. The BBC is on notice. Please govern yourself accordingly. Absolutely astonishing. Now, I don't know how the BBC can comply, because at best they can send out an apology, but that's not what the letter is demanding. There's more to it. But Nigel Farage also released a video statement just now, earlier on, saying that a former Plaid Cymru chief executive, this is the left-wing nationalist party in Wales, is now being paid £190,000 a year as the BBC's Nations Director. This is living proof that the BBC is infected with left-wing bias right to the top. Let's go to Nigel.
Well, what a dramatic day for the BBC. 2 major resignations. President Trump now even threatening to sue them for what they did. The BBC defend by saying, no. There's no bias in the BBC. We'll try this for size. Rhiannon Richards was the chief executive of Plaid. She worked during the Labour-Plaid coalition for the government of Wales. She's now a director of BBC Wales on just over £190,000 a year. There is living proof that right the way through to the top, the BBC is infected with left-wing bias.
Yeah, but we should also give you the reaction from the other side. That's what we do on this channel. The former CEO of BBC News, Deborah, who got sacked, was leaving the building, and reporters went to her, asked her about how she's feeling, and she said that the BBC is not institutionally biased. Now, how many people... I'm going to show you the video first, then I'm going to react to it, because this is fascinating.
Very well. How are you? Very well.
Deborah, have you failed the BBC?
I would like to say it has been the privilege of my career to serve as the CEO of BBC News and to work with our brilliant team of journalists. I stepped down over the weekend because the buck stops with me. But I'd like to make one thing very clear. BBC News is not institutionally biased. That's why it's the world's most trusted news provider.
Why did you fail to deal with the mistakes that were made?
And see my teams. Thank you so much.
Do you think that the journalists are corrupt, like President Trump says? Do you think the journalists
Of course our journalists aren't corrupt. Our journalists are hard-working people who strive for impartiality, and I will stand by their journalism.
Is there institutional bias at the BBC?
There is no institutional bias. Mistakes are made, but there's no institutional bias.
But why weren't the mistakes dealt with on Trump, on anti-Semitism, on women's rights?
I'm sure that story will emerge, but for now I'm going to go in and see our team.
Do you think the board acted
so much?
I love the usual mistakes were made. We are learning from mistakes. Also, I don't think, Deborah, you should say our journalists at the BBC, because you got fired. You do not belong in the BBC anymore. Anyway, she says that the BBC is not institutionally biased, okay? Now, this is just to play with words. That's what they do, because what they mean is we don't necessarily have an open meeting with the bosses to say, we are left-wing, guys, we should plot something. Yes, of course, you don't do that. But what you've done for decades is to hire and recruit people who already think like you and the rest of you. Deborah, how many people around you at the top of the BBC vote Tory, for example? Let alone Reform UK, for example, or support President Trump? How many? I would like to know, because I don't think that is going to be the case, that you actually have diversity of thought and values, because everybody gets recruited by the same people with a similar mentality, and this has been going on for a very, very long time. Now, if the BBC is going down, if they're going to go bankrupt, and that's likely now, they're going to have to change their model. And that's the question we have on the screen for you guys there. What is the best financial model for the BBC? Because there are a couple of different options. The obvious ones is obviously go towards a more streaming service or advertising like a normal channel. I'm going to get your reaction in the live chats. But what we do know is that for some time, not just the BBC, but the rest of the corporate legacy media have not really been doing their job properly. That's why this channel, 2CTV, we are now on 1,228,000 subscribers. This channel shouldn't exist. I shouldn't be here. And people like myself shouldn't do what we do. We should not be as successful. Well, we are, because they're not doing their job. It's their fault that I'm doing what I do. And of course, put aside all the other channels that do, new media channels that do podcasts or political commentary or reacting to stuff. I mean, those still count. But I'm talking about news channels, like obviously 2CTV and others. We exist because they created us. We are the Frankenstein monster that they created. Now, I'm going to get some reaction in the live chats about what you guys are thinking. Of course, before we do that, in order to destroy the BBC, we need your support. So the best thing you can do is to become a member of 2CTV Plus. You can do it by scanning the QR code on the screen or just go directly on 2c.tv. The direct link is also in the description, not the join button you see on YouTube. That's just YouTube membership. Just go on 2c.tv. But if you use the promo code, where's the promo code? YT10. I forgot the promo code. YT10 is on the screen now. You get 10% off annual memberships of 2CTV Plus. We have released a new original series called Why Poland Works, which is about, of course, Poland being the best case study in Europe compared to the other European countries. But also we're going to have a couple of other new documentaries, including the October the 7th. This is our Israeli documentary, and also the Anti-Family Agenda, which we'll bring you guys shortly in the next few days. All right, so what's going on with the live chat? Ivan says, the resignations were just an attempt to save the BBC. Yeah, this is the thing about the whole of the system. We live in what they call a rule-based society. This is what it's called, but I'm going to translate what it actually is in reality. So previously, on this planet, you had centralized systems, feudal systems, dictatorships, monarchies, like absolute monarchies. You had a king, you had a dictator, or a centralized committee like the Soviet Union side, deciding for everybody else in society what to do, what we should do to run the country. We then created a rule-based society, right? You know, people call it the liberal democracy. It's not the democracy part. It's actually a rule-based society, which means not one person is in charge. Which means, technically, if you bring down a president or prime minister, the system isn't brought down. In dictatorships or in centralized systems, you bring down the top, it's over. You bring down Khamenei in Iran, it's over for the Islamic Republic. But we have a rule-based society. But it's good and bad, right? The bad part is that they have been using it against us, which means the system could continue to be corrupt, or at least, benefit of the doubt, not working out unintentionally. I'm just saying it. And if people get angry, what they do is they throw the person at the top under the bus. Usually they start by throwing people in the middle and the junior people under the bus first. If that's not enough, they throw the people at the top under the bus. A prime minister could resign. The head of the BBC could resign. The head of FBI could resign, for example, right? But the problem continues. And this is the flaw of the system when the system is infiltrated by the same left-wing liberal globalists. Now, in the US, constitutionally, they have more power than us in the UK or in Europe. In the US, when a new president comes, like President Trump, he wipes out everybody in the White House and he brings in his own people. We can't do that here. It doesn't matter who the prime minister is or which party is in power. The head of civil service is the same. The permanent secretaries of civil service is the same. And everybody is the same. And you replace them, they're going to be replaced by their own people, because they are the ones in charge of recruiting the next people. You can't recruit the new person. This is a big problem. Rubate from Australia says that the BBC were perfectly happy to lie to the world about another country's leader. What hope do the English people have of getting the truth? They do have hope. It's called 2CTV. Subscribe to 2CTV Plus. Anyway, I agree, Rubate. Ivan also says, oh no, not the Lord's Prayer. Help, save us. Yeah, that is very far right. The Lord's Prayer. Very dangerous stuff, guys, according to Sky News. And he said, it's about time the pathetic BBC got brought down. They've been lying for years. For example, Brexit, and lockdown, and Israel, everything really, for the past few decades. It's getting really embarrassing. It's fascinating, the defenders of the BBC, because it's not just about BBC News, it's the whole of the BBC. So some people are trying to shift the goalposts So, for example, they say, well, it's difficult to defend BBC News. So we're going to go out there and say, we are defending the BBC, the overall organization. So what they tell you is the BBC has a massive impact, soft power. I'm going to destroy that argument in a second. They say, but the BBC has produced some great content. You know, Doctor Who, Sherlock, a couple of other shows like Yes Minister, Yes Prime Minister, The Thick of It. That has nothing to do with the logo of the BBC, you idiots. The creators, directors, producers, actors, writers, they come up with the idea. Now they can commission it to any outlet. They happen to go to the BBC. If the BBC never existed, those shows would have been on a different channel. Just like how we've been seeing great content on other platforms that is not the BBC. They make it sound like without the BBC, this show or that show wouldn't have happened. In fact, the only things that wouldn't have happened were shows or films or whatever documentaries that people don't watch. And that's what they always say. So, for example, they make a documentary about how they make remote controls, right? Literally, some nonsense. And they say this is very, very important education. And if you produce it on any other platform that requires advertising or subscription, it wouldn't do well because people don't have the appetite to watch it. So we have to subsidize it to put it on the BBC. Have you wondered why people won't watch it? Because they don't want to watch it. If something is dying, it should die. There is it's called supply and demand. It's not rocket science. If people don't want to watch the paint dry on the wall, why would you subsidize it to have that content? This is the problem with the whole argument when it comes to the BBC. Steve says, watch the service on Sunday with Wendell, same as I did last year. Thank you, Steve. This is the other thing, by the way. They say soft power. It's the influence of the British state across the world. I don't want that. What is this obsession with people's nostalgia of the British soft power? So you're telling me that Britain and the British people and the British culture would not be able to be noticed around the world or have any influence unless you had a BBC? Well, that just shows the weakness. If that is the case, that will show the weakness of the people of the country and the talent of the people of the country. That, well, we're going to have a propaganda machine to influence the world. Soft power, right? Why? You're not good enough to show the world what you have? Sweden have IKEA. What's that got to do with Sweden using the Swedish BBC, for example, or the SBC, let's just call it. But it makes no sense, these arguments. Ivan also says, are there any journalists at the BBC? Yeah, but the thing is, they also have very talented people who have been trained properly and experienced. But the problem is that they lie about what they are. You can be a journalist in the sense that you are just a reporter. You just report the facts. And I'm not really in favor of that. You can be a journalist that actually you can also give the facts and your opinion, but you have to be honest with people about your leanings. That's what we do on this channel. The BBC claim that they are just doing factual reporting, but you can see their biases in everything that they do. I don't care what leanings you are, if you're left wing or right wing. As long as you're honest with the people, people can decide, okay, I'm going to watch ABC or CNBC because I'm more liberal leaning, right? So I'm going to watch that. And right wingers could say, oh, I'm not going to watch it. Good. I'm more center right, so I'm going to watch Fox News-ish or GB News or whatever, right? Or 2CTV. At least you're honest. Same applies to newspapers. Newspapers, you know where they stand. This newspaper is more right-leaning, this newspaper is left-leaning, this newspaper is anti-establishment, this newspaper is basically pro-state. You can decide. People don't mind bias as long as you're honest about it. But when you lie, like Sky News, like CNN, like BBC News, or CBC, then that's where the problem is. People don't like to be lied to or being treated like idiots, because people are not idiots. Cancelled my license 12 years ago. They still invite me to pay again every 2 years, bless them. It's funny though, because for those who are not familiar with the UK, the BBC have this army. It's a fake army. They have an army of officials. It's very much like East Germany with no power. It's like the communist East Germany with no power. They've been threatening people for decades. They send out letters. They have these vans. They stopped doing that now. They used to have these vans. They go around the neighborhoods with a satellite dish on top of it. They used to scare people, saying basically the propaganda was, because we have this satellite dish, we can tell which one of you is watching TV, which one of you hasn't paid your license fee. Then that was exposed that was a lie. It was just to scare people. And they threaten people, send out red letters. We're going to come for you because we know you're watching TV. They don't have any power. So they can't do anything about it. Because of that's been exposed, and people have woken up over the last few years, over the last 10 years or so, and a lot of people stop paying it. And they're like, well, what's the point? What are you going to do? Knock on my door? I'm not going to let you in. When Trump wins against the BBC, he should publicly donate his winnings to UKIP. Well, UKIP, of all parties. I'm American, love you guys. Thank you so much, Brianna. Mujtaba Noruzi says the BBC is a smear and distortion agency and played a dirty role in the red and black reactionary rebellion in Iran. So the BBC Persian is the propaganda arm of Ayatollah Khomeini in Iran. BBC Persian, which is part of the BBC in London, funded and controlled by people in London, funded by the British taxpayers and controlled by the bureaucrats. You would think it's called the BBC Persian, like BBC Arabic or BBC this or BBC that, right? This is the whole argument of British soft power influence is very important. BBC World Service. You know what they do? There are many others many other branches like BBC Persian. They take the side of the country, so the enemy of the UK. In this case, the Islamic Republic of Iran. We are funding it for them to take the sides of the IRGC. These are the same people who also did propaganda for Khomeini back in the 1970s when he was in Paris and colluding with CIA, Jimmy Carter, and France and MI6. The BBC were there to be the propaganda machine for the Islamists, because they were told this is a good gamble, otherwise Iran will fall into the hands of the communists in Soviet Union. They thought if they backed the Islamists, that would be a good outcome. Well, it backfired, because the next day the Islamist nutters went on the streets of Tehran and chanted death to America. Whoopsie. Anyway, someone says when the BBC go bankrupt, 2CTV should buy it. I think it would be very cheap at that point. Why on earth would I do that to myself? One of the problems I have with the corporate media is actually, it's not really about bias or anything like that. It's actually the unnecessary overheads. So you won't necessarily need an army of producers or major unnecessarily shiny studios to get the facts out and get high numbers in terms of viewership. Right now we have about 12,000 people watching live, and more people will be watching it later. We'll get about 500,000 views. Without that, we have a small team. We have a decentralized team at 2CTV. We have our what we call 2CTV agents. These are our reporters and sources that work around the world. We have them in each region. They help us, and we have a small team here. You won't necessarily, and of course we are expanding, but one of the models that we have at 2CTV is decentralization. As we get bigger, we are going to avoid becoming centralized. It doesn't work. Autonomy is better. Self-determination for each division and each team is extremely important. You just have to make sure that you hire people that have the right mindset to be able to do that. This is where a lot of smaller businesses, when they get bigger, they go wrong because they become centralized and they lose control of it. That's what happened to the early days of Apple and eventually they basically kicked out Steve Jobs because of that. He couldn't control it anymore. And then they couldn't control him, and the whole thing backfired. Same thing is happening at the OpenAI right now. Kamal says, tuk-tuks, as in Tucker Carlson, latest grift are downplaying the Christian genocide in Nigeria and standing up for Nicolas Maduro. The Heritage Foundation praised him. The last few days, Tucker Carlson defending communists in Venezuela and basically denying there's been genocide in Nigeria has been peak Tucker Carlson, which is again it's not really a surprise. The people who come from the corporate legacy media, even if they leave it or get cancelled, and they tell you we are different now because we now hate the mainstream media. They were trained by the mainstream. They have the same culture. They have the tabloid culture. It doesn't go anywhere. Statue outside the BBC headquarters sums them up. Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. The one on the wall. It's dodgy. Anyway, that's the latest on this. There's going to be more reaction. We have till Friday. That is the official deadline for obviously the President Trump to take the BBC to court, which will cost them a lot of money. Make sure to support us and our new media independent revolution by joining 2CTV Plus. Scan the QR code that you see on the screen, or just go on 2c.tv. You can use the promo code YT10, as in YouTube 10, to get 10% off annual memberships of 2CTV Plus. We recently released the new content on our main streaming service, 2CTV Plus. Make sure to download the 2CTV app from your app stores if you want to stay up to date with all the news from around the world throughout the day. Of course, YouTube will stay as it is in terms of breaking news and live streams, but most of the news is actually on the app and on the website. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Maya Tusi, and we are the media.